Next is mechanism of respiration. It includes the four steps: breathing, external respiration, internal respiration, and fourth one is the cellular respiration. Breathing is one part of respiration. In the breathing, it is a physical process and gases exchange between the atmosphere and the lungs. But respiration, it is a different things in which ATP is formed. In a breathing process involves inspiration and expiration, and it is a combined action of ribs, sternum, intercostal muscles, and muscles of diaphragm. Difference between inspiration and expiration. First of all, we are going to discuss about inspiration. Inspiration means intake of air inside the lungs. What can you imagine? The diaphragm becomes raised, the diaphragm becomes flat, the intercostal muscles, ribs, sternum, they become moves forward and outward, moves forward and outward. Diaphragm shape becomes flat. Therefore, increase in volume of thoracic cavity, volume increases, but pressure, air pressure, it is decreases. So volume increases, air pressure inside the lung decreases. So from the outside atmospheric air, high concentration to low concentration. So it is a active process and air comes into the lungs. How this happen? This sternum, ribs, intercostal muscles, diaphragm. It is a combining action of inspiration. In inspiration, contraction of external intercostal muscle, relaxation of internal intercostal muscles, rib cage moves upward and forward, diaphragm becomes flat. Therefore, volume of thoracic cavity increases and pressure of air pressure decreases. In that manner, atmospheric air, high concentration to low, the air comes in lungs. This is the inspiration. Expiration, it is a passive process, relaxation of external intercostal muscle, opposite contraction of intercostal muscles occurs in this expiration mechanism. The rib cage moves downward and inward. The diaphragm becomes dome shape. Therefore, decrease in the volume of thoracic cavity, but pressure, air pressure in the lungs is greater than the atmospheric pressure. So volume of thoracic cavity decreases, air pressure in the lungs increases. So expulsion due to the pressure on the lungs, expulsion of air from the lungs. So this is the difference between inspiration and expiration. Second step is external respiration. Here takes place between the alveoli sac, alveolar level and capillary level. Respiratory membrane. Alveolar wall and capillary walls both are, first slide we are going to discuss before that. So they are become moist, the wall layer becomes thin. This wall of alveoli made up of squamous epithelial cells. They supplies, this is the pulmonary artery supplies to the alveoli sac. Here oxygen comes from the atmosphere. So oxygen level in the alveoli sac, it is 104. Partial pressure of oxygen is 104. At the same time, in the pulmonary artery, oxygen level is 40. Partial pressure. So exchange of O2 and CO2 between the alveoli and capillary wall, this is the external respiration. External respiration at alveolar and pulmonary capillaries, uh, due to the mechanism is diffusion from means high concentration to low concentration. Exchange of O2 CO2 takes place. Here the one slide is most important regarding the exchange of external respiration. See this slide. See, alveoli, the partial pressure of oxygen is 104. At the same time, pulmonary arteries, the partial pressure of oxygen is 40. And in the blood capillaries, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, it is a 45. At the same time, in the alveoli, the carbon dioxide partial pressure is 40. So from high to low, see, from high concentration to low concentration, from pulmonary artery to the alveoli, CO2 is released in alveoli, and high to low alveoli to blood capillary, that is the pulmonary veins. In the pulmonary veins, oxygen is released from high concentration to low concentration. So air, oxygen comes in from alveoli to pulmonary vein. So exchange of O2 CO2 takes place between the alveoli and blood capillaries by the diffusion process, that is high to low. Oxygen comes from alveoli to blood capillary, and from carbon dioxide from high to low blood capillary to alveoli. CO2 comes into the alveoli, and from the alveoli it expel out in expiration process. Carbon dioxide is released outside. Carbon dioxide is released outside. Next, internal respiration. It is a between the blood capillaries and alveoli and into the cellular level. Respiration takes place. But here are some important things are mentioned, very necessary. This is a, suppose here this is the tissue. In the tissue, in oxidation process, oxygen is consumed. So due to the consumption of oxygen, release of carbon dioxide. So at the tissue level, carbon dioxide level is increases. This carbon dioxide is combines with water to form H2CO3. This H2CO3, in the presence of enzyme, carbonic anhydrase enzyme. The carbonic anhydrase enzymes, um, this H2CO3, it is dissociate quickly because it is unstable. H2CO3, it is unstable and dissociate quickly in the presence of enzyme carbonic anhydrase. This carbonic anhydrase enzyme, it is a reversible. That mechanism, it is a very important, asking for AIMS level question. Carbonic anhydrase enzyme, in the presence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme, carbonic acid dissociates into H plus and HCO3. So in the tissue level, hydrogen level increases. The pH becomes decreases. pH is decreases, but not it is so much difference. 7.4 blood pH, but it is slightly acidic. 7.34 IMP, very important question. Hydrogen ion increases, therefore pH is become decreases, but it is slightly changes in the blood. Why? Because that hemoglobin, it combines with the more hydrogen releases, that hydrogen combines with hemoglobin. So hemoglobin acts as a buffer, and therefore the blood pH is slightly acidic due to the hemoglobin is acts as a buffer. Tissue level, in the tissue the pH is decreases. So what happened? HCO3. The reason for chlorine shifting is the chlorine from outside of the uh, blood capillaries, they shift into the RBCs. See, Bohr effect and Halden effect, these are the most important things in the cellular respiration. Bohr effect, what? This is the at the tissue level. This is the RBC, red blood corpuscles. RBCs, hemoglobin pigment is there. Hemoglobin at the tissue level, oxygen is utilized, so oxygen level is decreases, carbon dioxide level is increases. That carbon dioxide combines with water in carbonic anhydrase enzymes, with the help of carbonic anhydrase enzymes to form H2CO3. It is a very unstable. They again dissociate immediately into H plus and HCO3 minus. Hydrogen ion increases in the RBCs. pH level pH level is decreases, and due to the pH level decreases, see, carbon dioxide increases, H2CO3 increases, hydrogen ion increases, pH is decreases, and therefore due to the pH decreases in the tissue, the hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin binding of oxyhemoglobin, it is a break. It is a break, and it is called as Bohr effect. These hemoglobin dissociate the oxygen into the tissue. Oxyhemoglobin, it comes from the lungs, but due to the decrease of pH, oxyhemoglobin binding break up, and that breakup of oxyhemoglobin, it is called as Bohr effect. So it hemoglobin dissociate oxygen, it release oxygen into the tissue. It again combines with carbon dioxide due to the high concentration of carbon dioxide in the tissue. High concentration of carbon dioxide into the tissues. The signal is comes from the brain, and carbon dioxide increases. Hemoglobin breaks the oxygen and immediately combines with carbon dioxide, and it is called as Haldane effect. So Bohr effect and Haldane effect, these are the most important things. What is the difference Bohr and Haldane? This is the mechanism of that both effect. Tissue, then hemoglobin from the RBCs, HCO3, it comes into the plasma. From the RBCs, HCO3 comes out from the RBC and comes into the plasma. That HCO3, carbonic ion, they combine with sodium. That is sodium, potassium, bicarbonate ions. They are present in plasma. So HCO3 combines with sodium. From the plasma, potassium chloride. From the potassium chloride, so chlorine, it dissociates from potassium and comes into the chlorine. Comes into the RBC. So it is called as chlorine shift. Next slide. Here briefly discuss chlorine shift or hamburger phenomenon. What is a chlorine shift or hamburger phenomenon? In the plasma fluid, potassium, from the potassium chloride, the chlorine is dissociated from potassium, comes into the RBCs. In spite HCO3 is comes from the RBCs. Chlorine is comes into RBC, HCO3 comes from the RBC. So this is called as a chlorine shift, or it is also called as hamburger effect. So this chlorine, when that RBC comes at the toward the lung or in the lungs, H2 plus carbon dioxide to form H2CO3, it again dissociate quickly by carboxylic anhydrase enzymes. So due to this carboxylic anhydrase, it is a reversible enzyme. It takes 10 times faster reaction. Due to these enzymes, the 10 times faster reaction takes place. H plus and HCO3. HCO3, it comes out in the lungs. H plus CO2 and carbon dioxide is exhaled out in the lungs. Dissociation of HCO3, it dissociates into H plus and CO2 and oxygen. CO2 and carbon dioxide is exhaled out in the lungs. And this is the chlorine shift, or it is also called as hamburger's effect. Now, this respiration mechanism, it includes breathing, external respiration, internal respiration at the cell level, cellular respiration. But this mechanism of respiration, it is controlled by CNS, which are the main CNS, medulla oblongata. So this breathing mechanism, it is controlled by medulla oblongata. So breathing center, breathing center in the medulla oblongata of the brain, that is CNS. The medulla oblongata is the center of breathing, and due to these chemoreceptors send a signal to the medulla oblongata. That breathing process, inhalation or exhalation process, it is not due to the increasing oxygen level. No, it is breathing mechanism. It is carried out due to the increase in carbon dioxide level. Increase in carbon dioxide level. See, because these chemoreceptors gives signal to medulla oblongata due to the rising level of carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion. So this carbon dioxide is a main thing to control the breathing, not oxygen. This center is not affected by low oxygen level or high oxygen level. This center is affected by give the signal of high concentration of carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions. There are these chemoreceptors. They are also present, MCQ, in carotid bodies. They are, and this carotid body is located in carotid arteries and in the aortic bodies, and they are located in aorta. Aorta, from the heart, the aorta is comes out. So carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion is the main uh, carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion is the main things. They are control the breathing rate. The medulla oblongata send a nerve impulse to the diaphragm, muscles of the ribs and intercostal muscles. So diaphragm becomes contract. Diaphragm becomes contract. At the time of contraction, the diaphragm becomes flat. Diaphragm becomes flat, while the rib cage becomes moves forward and upward. So air flows into the lungs, alveolar wall expand and stretch. Stretch. Why? On the wall of alveolar, there are the stretch receptors that detect the stretching. Like the frog, they cannot be expand, and last time the frog becomes dead due to the bursting of the alveolar sac. But in human being, there are stretch receptors on the alveolar walls, so they detect how much stretching capacity of lungs. On the alveolar wall, the stretch receptors are present and they detect the stretching capacity of that alveoli. The nerves in the alveoli, they send a signal to the brain's medulla oblongata, and from sending its message, now stop the stretching, it becomes burst. It will becomes burst. So stop the stretching. It is a maximum capacity of stretching. We can inhale. Bus. This is the my stretching capacity of inhalation. So why it happens? Due to the stretching receptors which are present on the wall of alveoli. They give signal to medulla oblongata. Then medulla oblongata, what gives the signal to? Gives the signals to the receptors of ribs, intercostal muscles, diaphragm muscles. Stop the contraction. Stop the contraction. So due to the stretch receptors, medulla oblongata's breathing diagnose or detect the breathing rate, the rib muscles, to how much contraction of how much contraction takes place between the diaphragm, rib cage, and intercostal muscles. It is detected by the stretch receptors, give signal to medulla oblongata, and medulla oblongata they stop or inhibit the stretching, inhibit the contraction, inhibit uh, the contraction mechanism of diaphragm. So diaphragm relax and moves upward, resuming its original position, and air is forced out the lungs. So these are the very important things which how the CNS uh, detect, or how the CNS maintain the breathing process by giving the signals. One more thing, see, an instrument, that instrument it is called as spirometer. It is used to determine the respiratory volumes by a graphic record on the graph paper. Here shows the volume of air exchange. See, that diagram is very much very important. See, what is this? This is the tidal volume. I am talking here in front of you. This is my normal breathing, means inhalation, inhale the air, exhale. This is my normal breathing. So this normal breathing, inhalation and exhalation, this is the tidal volume. Tidal volume in which inspired and expired, that is a normal breathing. It is a tidal volume, and it is a 500 ml. The lungs volume in millimeter, 500 ml. Inspiratory reserve volume, volume of air which inspired forcefully beyond tidal volume. Ramdev Baba says, take a jerk, take a air inside maximally. So intake of maximum or forcefully air intake, that is the inspiratory reserve volume. It is 3000 ml. This is the normal breathing, inspiration, expiration. But this is the forceful inspiration. It is a this is the inspiratory reserve volume. At the time of Kapalbhati. So forcefully expired out or expired CO2, forcefully expired air. So it is called as expiratory reserve volume. Volume of air which expired forcefully, it is called as expiratory reserve volume beyond the tidal volume. Tidal volume is this normal breathing of inhalation and exhalation. But forcefully inspiration, it is called as inspiratory reserve volume. It is a 3000 ml. But forcefully expired volume, see, it is called as expiratory reserve volume. Residual volume, when the scotch brite, at a time of you squeeze it, the remaining water content is present in the sponge. Residual volume, volume of air which always remain in the lungs. This is the example of sponge. When you squeeze the sponge, all the water is not released from the sponge. Some water molecules, they are adhere to the sponge wall or to the sponge. So residual volume means remain exhalation process, the forceful expiration, the volume of air which remain in the lungs, and it is about 1200 ml. Residual volume means ARV plus RV is equal to 2300 ml residual volume. Vital capacity. Now here the vital capacity. This is the normal tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and mini total of these. It is called as vital capacity. Means IRV plus expiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume. It is vital capacity. 3000 plus 1100 plus tidal volume is 500. So it is 4600 ml is vital capacity. Hemoglobin. Due to this, hemoglobin acts as a buffer nature. So slightly change in pH of blood. It is slightly acidic. Why? Because hemoglobin increases the oxygen. Hemoglobin has affinity. Hemoglobin has the love about the oxygen. Because hemoglobin has the affinity about the oxygen, they combine with oxygen and to form oxyhemoglobin. So this capacity of bind with oxygen, it is a 60 times faster. But when the carbon dioxide level is increases at the tissue level, due to the increasing carbon dioxide level, the hemoglobin break up with oxygen and combines with carbon dioxide. Hemoglobin also composed of 4 polypeptide chain, and at the same time, due to increasing hydrogen ion in the tissue, the hemoglobin binds with hydrogen, and to minimize the uh, pH. So hemoglobin acts as a buffer. There are about 200 MCQ. There are about 200 million hemoglobin molecules per RBCs. It increases the oxygen carrying capacity of blood 60 times faster. Hemoglobin is composed of 4 polypeptide chain. It is connected to 4 hemogroups, and they are binds with hydrogen, so acts as a buffer in nature. um, Next one, see, hemoglobin combines with excess water, excess hydrogen ion. So the blood pH remain constant. Blood pH remain constant. So hemoglobin is acts as a buffer. Now, common disorders of respiratory. Common disorders of respiratory system. Yeah, before the first slide, we have to studied that is upper respiratory tract, lower respiratory tract. So, on which region the inflammation or inflammation or inflammation occurred, that part, so name of that disease is given, that area. So for example, common disorder, asthma. Asthma is inflammation of airways, windpipe, trachea. The patient's breathing, it becomes it forms a noisy, uh, they cannot breathe properly. They have problem at the time of breathing. Difficulties occurred due to inflammation of the airways. It is a chronic respiratory disease leading to difficulty in breathing, wheezing, आवाज घरघर आवाज येतो, wheezing and coughing. The second disorder, common disorder, is bronchitis. Bronchitis, the name is bronchi, bronchioles. So inflammation of bronchiole tubes. Bronchi, primary, secondary, tertiary bronchi, bronchioles. So inflammation in bronchiole tubes which carries air to and from the lungs. Pneumonia. Pneumonia, inflammation of lungs. What are the bronchioles? Inflammation of bronchial. Asthma, inflammation of airways. Pneumonia, inflammation of lungs. It is caused by bacteria, viruses, or fungi. So it causes inflammation of alveolar sac and the air sacs, because these are the fluid is built up into the air sacs, so cannot smoothly uh, process of O2 CO2 occurred. So inflammation of lungs and alveoli. COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. COPD, it blocks the airflow and make a difficulty to breathe. Emphysema. Second one is emphysema. Emphysema means damage of air pipe, damage of air sacs, and reducing the ability of exchange of O2 and CO2. Last one is chronic bronchitis. Chronic means जुनाट आजार, long term that disease is occurred. So persistent, long time, persistent inflammation and excessive mucus production in bronchial tube. It is called as, this bronchitis is different, and chronic bronchitis means acute or persistent inflammation and mucus production in the bronchial tube. Lung cancer. Uncontrolled growth of cell is called as tumor. It has two types, malignant tumor and benign tumor. Benign tumor means simple tumor, but malignant tumor means cancer tumor. It originates in the lungs and it is caused by smoking and exposure to carcinogens. Those products create cancer, that content or that products are called as carcinogenic agent. Tobacco, it causes cancer, so tobacco is carcinogenic agent. Occupational respiratory disorder. Occupation means the workplace of that employees inhaling dust and chemicals in certain workplaces. It includes asbestosis, asbestos dust, and silicosis means silica dust. They are saturated in the upper or lower respiratory tract. So occupational respiratory disorder. TB, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a serious infection. It affects the lungs and caused by MCQ, or give the answer in one sentence. Mycobacteria, bacteria, जीवाणु, mycobacterium tuberculosis, TB. Cystic fibrosis, it is a genetic disorder. It is also MCQ type of question. Cyst म्हणजे गाठ. Cystic fibrosis, a genetic disorder, affect the lungs and digestive system. It is a thick mucus buildup that can lead to breathing difficulties and infection. And last point, hearing brewer reflex. What is a hearing brewer reflex? The stretching or maximum stretching capacity of lungs. Who detect? Stretch receptors. So the reflex which prevents overstretching, like the frog. No overstretching in human being. Due to this brewer reflex which prevents overstretching or busting of alveoli. In the wall of alveoli and bronchioles, sensory cells are present and they are called as stretch receptors. These stretch receptors gives the signal to medulla oblongata to what is the maximum capacity of stretching of alveoli. So this stretch receptor, when alveoli completely filled with air, these receptors stimulate and gives impulses toward the brain through the vagus nerve and causes inhibition म्हणजे रोखणे, inhibition of inspiratory center. So inspiration stop and expiration start. So this is the main thing, hearing brewer reflex action. It is present in alveolar stretch receptors. They give signal to the brain, that is the medulla oblongata, to stop the inhibition or to stop the contraction or to stop the relaxation. So this is the most important thing, and here we complete the topic one bit of that topic, respiration. Thank you.